in this scenario, when we are very much in need of delivering our content with the help of PowerPoint presentation, it is important to understand the importance of this particular topic. We all can prepare an effective presentation, and we have already done this. But now this is the time to make it more effective, because in previous days we were having the face-to-face interaction with the students. At that particular time, we could have the clarity with them. But nowadays, it is important that our PPT is having an impact upon the receiver or the students in a way so that they are in a position to understand what we are trying to say. Because face-to-face interaction is not possible in this pandemic situation. Now, as PPP, you can see over there in PowerPoint presentation, this P letter has a very important role, whether it is plan, purpose, prepare, or practice. Purpose. Determining purpose is a very important element that we cannot escape. Because when we are having a purpose with us, we will be able to understand that why we are going to give this particular presentation. And when we are in a position to understand the question why, we will be able to answer this particular question in the form of what, how, when, where, and why. So purpose is very much important. Then comes the plan and present that we are going to discuss in further slide. When we are discussing about who, what, how, when, and where, we have to understand who refers to audience. Here in this scenario, as we can see, for teaching fraternity, the audience is student, and that is why we know the composition or the understanding level of the audience. Then comes the what. When we have to answer the question of what, it is important that we have to understand what topic or subtopics that we have to inculcate in our PowerPoint presentation. And in that particular situation, you have to also understand about the coverage, structure, and the layout of the content. Coming to the next one, that is how. How also becomes very important, because sometimes it is possible that it may not be directly related with the understanding part, but it has a great impact upon the understanding of the audience. Because if it has the disturbances, because if design or the layout has not been chosen properly, they may mar the effectiveness of the whole PowerPoint presentation. And that's why choosing themes, images, and animations becomes very much important. And at the last comes the delivery part, where we have to understand how we are going to present our PowerPoint presentation. Are we sharing the PPT only? Is PPT is having the narration, or is PPT is having both narration and the video as well? At the last comes the feedback. As you all know that communication is incomplete without feedback, and that is why it is important that at the last we have to have the question answer session so that we can understand the understanding level of the audience, whether the audience has the understanding of the content or not. To make it more effectful, we have to anticipate the questions well in advance. But in this situation, when we are not having the face-to-face interaction with the audience, or where we are not present in front of the audience, what we can do is we can inculcate quiz also in the form of Google Forms. We can have the Google Forms quiz, and we can share the link with the students so that they can answer, and then we can understand whether the students are understanding it properly or not. In the next slide, we are going to discuss about the topic which is related to the audience. As the acronym itself suggests, there are certain keywords that are important to understand when we are talking about audience. And in this, the most important element is customization. Customization with respect to the expectation. Because obviously the need over here in this context is to get the knowledge of a particular topic, of a particular subject. But we, as in the previous session, in the webinar, they were discussing about the centralized learning. That means we have to focus on the audience, we have to focus on the student centric approach. There we have to customize our element in a way so that we can meet the expectation of the student. Coming to the next part, that is content. Content is including in itself the three most important elements when we are discussing about PowerPoint presentation. It is coverage, structure, and language. Coverage, that means we are choosing the topics and subtopics in a way so that we can best meet the expectation of the audience. When we are talking about the structure, it should be categorized in three parts. That is, first of all, you have to say what you are going to say. Second, say it. And third, you have to say what you have already said. That means it is in the form of introduction, main content, and conclusion. This should be the structure of your PowerPoint presentation, and which should be well evident to the student also. When it is coming to the part of language, it is very important element when we are having a content to be delivered. There, conciseness, clarity, coherent, compact, there are so many. When we are talking about conciseness, that means we have to be brief in expression. We cannot have the information overload over there. At the same time, whatever we have to say it in the minimum number of words. Clarity of thought and clarity of expressions are two terms that should be very much clear in the mind of the sender. That means at your own part. We have to understand what we are trying to communicate, and we have to communicate in the best possible way so that the clarity of understanding is there in the mind of the students. At the same time, it should be error free. When I'm talking about the term coherent, that means the idea should be logically linked with each other. There should not be a gap between the ideas, otherwise there will be distortion of message in the mind of the audience. There are certain do's and don'ts when we are talking about the content. We have to make sure that we have defined the coverage carefully. Our slide should not be very lengthy, otherwise it can become very boring, and sometimes the students may feel bored also. So we have to make sure that whatever topic we are choosing, we are not going beyond 10 to 15 or max to max 20 slides, depending upon the purpose of your PowerPoint presentation, and it should not go beyond 20 to 25 minutes. Subtopics must relate to the main topic so that coherence element that we discussed earlier should be there, and we have to be specific, and we should use simple language also. When I'm talking about don'ts, what we should avoid. Obviously, avoiding lengthy presentations will be helpful. And then complicated hierarchy. That means there should not be topics, subtopics, then again subcategories are there because it may distort the comprehension. Then jargons. We should not use jargons because jargons are specific to the organization, to the institutes, and it may not be understandable by the general public. Design part. Designing consists in itself various themes, color theme, visual elements, bullet schemes, font styles, and so on. When we have to choose color theme, we have to see the purpose, because what your purpose is. If you have to show so many tables, so many charts or graphs at that particular time, your background should be a little light so that whatever content is there, it is well evident. And at the same time, if you have to focus on content which is in writing, you can choose the darker slides as well. When I'm talking about color theme based on organization, it is like organizations have their own identity. And by seeing that, it should be evident that this PowerPoint presentation is related to this particular organization. As a suggestion, I can tell that we, the faculty of Vidyalankar Polytechnic, can have a common template on which we can prepare our e-content. So that by seeing that particular, the first slide, the student can understand that this PPT is belonging to Vidyalankar Polytechnic. Bullet scheme should not be very complicated. Font style and visual elements we will discuss in the later slides as well. When I'm talking about the do's and don'ts, font size should not be, for the headings, it should not go beyond 36 to 44, and for text or the subtopics, it should not go beyond 24 to 30. Legible font should be there. Sans Serif is the preferable fonts, and images and animations that you are using should strengthen the concept, strengthen the understanding, and should not have the distraction with the main content. And that's why we have to be very careful while choosing these particular things. what should be avoided? What we do sometimes, we are giving some other color, or we are capitalizing a certain word to make it to emphasize on a particular word, but overusing of these things may mar the effectiveness of the content. And at the same time, images and animations, when we are putting that images, especially we have to maintain the aspect ratio, because when we are disturbing the aspect ratio, the images get blurred, and then it doesn't look good in the PowerPoint presentation. We should always avoid so many legends in a single chart, because that may make your PowerPoint your chart complicated and will be difficult to understand. In one slide, there should not be more than 6 bullet points, because we cannot have a kind of paragraph over there. We cannot have more than 6 bullet points, because then it will be cluttered. When we are coming about the delivery part, as I said, that when it is a PPT only, it should be self-explanatory, because the student has to understand the content with the help of the reading. So whatever you have written, if it is not clear, or if it is not self-explanatory, sometimes the students may not be able to understand what you're trying to tell. Then comes the PPT with audio narration. At that particular time, focus on paralinguistic skills becomes very important. And when we are talking about PPT with audio and video, focus on both paralinguistic and body language is there. What are the do's and don'ts related to this? As I said, paralinguistic skills are non-verbal vocal cues that helps to enhance the quality of the narration. So here we have to focus on pause, pitch, voice modulation, pronunciation, and articulation as the part of the paralinguistic skills. When I'm talking about pause, it denotes the transition of thoughts. Sometimes, if to give emphasis, also we use pause. So it becomes very important that we are giving pause in a sentence to make it more understandable that now the thought is going to be changed. When I'm talking about voice modulation, if you are talking in a same pitch, it becomes monotonous and boring for the receiver. So we have to make sure. Pronunciation, as English is not our mother tongue, so sometimes it is possible that we may have the regional impact upon our way of speaking. So we have to make sure that we are seeing that what is the correct pronunciation of a particular word, and then only we are pronouncing it. Body language is also a key element when video is also there. So we have to make sure that whatever gestures and postures we are using is good, and it is not basically disturbing the whole element, and it is enhancing the quality of the presentation as well. Maintaining eye contact is very important. We cannot read the content over there, because then you will not be able to have an eye contact, and then it masks the effectiveness of the whole PowerPoint presentation. What should be avoided? We should avoid non-stop speaking, as I am doing. We should try to avoid being monotonous, and for this we can have small anecdotes or small stories if possible to make it more interesting. As I've already said, that we should not read the content, and body posture should be taken care of, because it has a very great impact upon the audience. This video will help you to understand what I'm trying to tell with the help of the animation. In this, there are various do's and don'ts that we are going to discuss about while making our effective presentation more effective. And in this continuation, as I said, that since sans serif font should be used, we should not use the distracting fonts, because sometimes it is not legible for the students or the audience, you can say, in a broader way. So we have to choose the fonts accordingly, which are clear and understandable. The second point is that we cannot underline the whole content, because sometimes it may, like the students may think that it is a kind of hyperlink, and misconception is there. So font size, font color, and font style should be used for emphasis and not for the distraction in the mind of the receiver. So we have to be very careful while choosing all such things. When I'm talking about the font size, a smaller font size will not be having the legibility, and that's why when the students will see that, they will not be able to see the content properly. So you have to choose the readable fonts at that particular time. Then comes the most important element that overload the viewer with shapes, animations, objects, and sometimes information as well. So we have to be very cautious that we are not having the bombardment of such things in the presentation. Your infographic should be easy to understand and relatable also. When I'm talking about the 6 bullet points in a slide, that means paragraph should not be there, and you have to make sure that you are not using more than 6 bullet points, because then the understanding will be quite difficult for the reader. Hazy backgrounds, blur background should be avoided, because then your content may get lost in that particular thing. So we have to make sure that the background is very simple and plain kind of background, which is enhancing the quality of your PowerPoint presentation and not marring the effectiveness of that. And at the last, we have to make sure that we are not having the crazy animations in to make the effect in the PowerPoint presentations, because it is disturbing the attention of the audience and it is not required at all. So what we have to do is we have to choose simple animations, and if possible, we can have a simple PowerPoint presentations. Thank you everyone. Thank you for your patient listening, and now we are open for a question answer session. With this, I am sharing the reading material that you can refer if you want to read further. Thank you.